The massive station called Nexus Prime floated in the dark space between star systems. Ships from across the galaxy docked at its many ports. Today was important. The Galactic Council was meeting, and everyone who mattered would be there. Ambassador Tae-ho Kim walked through the long corridors of the station. His black diplomatic uniform was simple compared to the bright colors and strange shapes worn by alien delegates. Behind him walked his team. Colonel Bo-Ram Lee wore her military uniform, with pride. Dr. Hee-Jin Park carried a datapad full of research notes. Woo-Jin Choi looked like any other diplomat, but his eyes never stopped watching. "Remember," Tae-ho said quietly, "we are here to listen first. Speak only when asked." The team nodded. They had been through this many times before. The big alien powers never took humans seriously. Humans were new to space. Their technology seemed weak, their ships were small. Most aliens thought humans were like children playing with toys. The council chamber was huge. It could hold thousands of beings from hundreds of different worlds. The ceiling stretched up so high that clouds formed near the top. Light came from crystals that floated in the air. The whole place was built to make visitors feel small. 3 groups controlled most of the galaxy. The Veltak Empire sat on the left side of the chamber. They looked like giant insects with sharp claws and black eyes. Their leader was Prime Speaker Vextar. He was twice as tall as any human, and his voice sounded like metal scraping on stone. The Corvani Federation took the right side. They were made of living crystal that glowed with inner light. Elder Zephyriel was their oldest member. She had lived for over 1,000 years and thought all younger races were foolish children. In the center sat the Theron Dominion. They looked like lizards that walked on 2 legs. War Chief Grakmon had scales as black as space and teeth like knives. When people loved to fight and respected only strength. Tae-ho led his team to the small section reserved for minor powers. The seats were in the back, far from the important discussions. Other small delegations sat nearby. None of them got much respect either. "The council will now begin," announced a mechanical voice that filled the chamber. "Today we discuss trade, routes through the Gamma sector." Prime Speaker Vextar rose first. His forearms moved as he spoke. "The Veltak Empire claims exclusive rights to these routes. Our ships are faster. Our trade is more valuable. Younger races should find other paths through space." Elder Zephyriel's crystal body flashed with colored light. "The Corvani Federation has used these routes for 500 years. We will not abandon them for insect upstarts who learned to fly between stars only yesterday." War Chief Grakmon slammed his fist on his desk. The sound echoed through the chamber. "The Theron Dominion takes what it can hold. Our warships will escort our traders. Let others try to stop us." The argument went on for hours. Each group demanded exclusive control. None would share. Smaller powers tried to speak but were ignored. The 3 big empires acted like they owned the entire galaxy. Finally, the mechanical voice called for other opinions. "Do any minor delegations wish to speak?" Tae-ho stood up slowly. "The human delegation requests permission to address the council." Laughter came from the Veltak section. Prime Speaker Vextar's mandibles clicked with amusement. "What could humans possibly contribute to this discussion? Your ships are barely capable of reaching other star systems. Your technology is primitive. Your people are weak." More laughter came from the Theron area. War Chief Grakmon showed his sharp teeth. "Humans fight like children. 1 Theron warrior could defeat 10 human soldiers. Why should we listen to species that cannot even defend themselves?" Elder Zephyriel's voice was softer but just as dismissive. "Young humans, you have been in space for less than a century. We have been traveling between stars since before your species learned to make fire. Perhaps it would be better if you listened and learned instead of trying to speak." Tae-ho remained standing. His face showed no emotion. "Honored delegates, we appreciate your wisdom. However, we believe all species deserve fair access to trade routes. Cooperation benefits everyone more than conflict." "Cooperation?" Vextar's laugh was like breaking glass. "Humans want cooperation because they are too weak to compete. The strong take what they need. The weak accept what they are given. The Three major powers began discussing how to divide the trade routes among themselves. They talked as if no other species existed. Hours passed. Smaller delegations grew frustrated but could do nothing. During a break, Taeho noticed movement in the observation deck above the main floor. Captain So-Young Jang was there. She was supposed to be coordinating security for the human delegation, but her hand signals meant something different. The message was clear. Everything was ready. Taeho looked at his team. Bo-Ram's hand rested near her communication device. Hee-Jin was reviewing data on her pad with new intensity. Woo-Jin's eyes had found 3 different exit routes from the chamber. The session resumed. The 3 major powers had reached an agreement. They would split the Gamma Sector routes among themselves. All other species would pay fees to use them. The fees were so high that most smaller civilizations would be forced to find other paths through dangerous, unexplored space. "Are there any objections to this arrangement?" asked the mechanical voice. Silence filled the chamber. The smaller delegations knew objecting was useless. They had no power to change anything. But Taeho stood again. This time his movement was different, more purposeful. The chamber grew quiet as beings noticed the change in his manner. "Honored delegates," he said in a clear voice that carried to every corner of the huge chamber. "Before this vote is taken, I must inform the Council of an important development." Prime Speaker. Vextar's eyes glittered with annoyance. What could humans possibly have to tell this council that would change anything? Taeho looked directly at each of the major power leaders. His next words were spoken slowly and clearly, so everyone could understand their full meaning. As of this moment, humanity is formally declaring war. The enormous chamber fell completely silent. Even the floating crystals seemed to dim. Every being in the room stared at the human ambassador who had just announced something impossible. War? Humans were declaring war? Against whom? And why announce it here, in front of the entire galaxy? The silence stretched on as the implications began to sink in. The silence broke like a dam bursting. Shouts filled the chamber in dozens of different languages. Security guards rushed toward the human section. Delegates jumped from their seats. Some species made threatening gestures. Others tried to leave. The chamber quickly. Prime Speaker Vextar's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Silence." The chamber grew quiet again, but tension filled the air like electricity before a storm. "Human, explain yourself immediately. War against whom? Your species lacks the power to threaten anyone in this galaxy." Taeho remained calm. He showed no fear even though hundreds of powerful beings were staring at him with anger and confusion. "I understand your shock. Please allow me to explain." War Chief Grakmon rose from his seat, his hand moving to the weapon at his side. "Humans cannot declare war on the Theran Dominion. We would crush your worlds in days. Your announcement is either madness or stupidity." "Neither," said a new voice that boomed throughout the chamber. A holographic image appeared in the center of the room. It showed a human in military uniform standing on the bridge of a spaceship. "I am Admiral Min-Soo Kwan of the Human Defense Fleet. Our ships are currently surrounding this station." Panic spread through some sections of the chamber, but the major powers looked more confused than afraid. How could human ships surround Nexus, Prime, without being detected? Their sensors would have spotted any approaching fleet. The hologram continued. "We have been cloaked using technology that your sensors cannot detect. 47 human warships are currently in position around this station. But we are not here to threaten any of you." Elder Zephyriel's crystal form pulsed with different colors. "If not us, then who? Humans have no enemies with power to threaten them. This makes no sense." Taeho stepped forward again. "Honored delegates, our enemy is not any species represented in this chamber. Our enemy has been hiding among you for centuries. They have been controlling your leaders, starting your wars, and feeding on your conflicts." "Impossible," Vextar said, but his voice was less certain than before. "The Velthak Empire is controlled by no one. We are the supreme species." Dr. Hyojin Park stood up. her data pad glowing with information. Prime Speaker, when did you last have a full medical examination? Not by your military doctors, but by independent scientists? What kind of question is that? Vextar's mandibles clicked with irritation. The kind that might save your life, Hyojin replied. She touched her data pad, and images appeared on screens around the chamber. They showed brain scans, cellular structures, and complex biological data. These are the results of 7 years of careful research. We have discovered a parasitic species that lives inside the brains of other beings. The images changed to show microscopic creatures that looked like tiny worms with multiple heads. They pulsed with dark energy and seemed to move with purpose. We call them shadow parasites, Hyojin continued. They attach to the brainstem and influence thoughts, emotions, and decisions. The host believes their actions are their own, but they are being guided by the parasite's hunger for conflict and chaos. Woojin Choi activated another screen. This one showed communication intercepts, financial records, and movement patterns of ships and troops. For the past 20 years, we have been tracking unusual patterns in galactic politics, wars that made no strategic sense, trade disputes that harmed everyone involved, military buildups that served no purpose except to create more conflict. You're saying we've been infected by mind-controlling parasites? War Chief Grakmon's laugh was harsh, but there was uncertainty in his eyes. Prove it. A new figure entered the chamber from the human section. Lieutenant Commander Yujin Song was small compared to most beings present, but something about her made others step back. Her eyes seemed to see things that weren't visible to normal sight. I can prove it, Yujin said quietly. Her voice wasn't loud, but everyone could hear it clearly. I am what humans call psionic. I can sense thoughts and emotions that others cannot detect. I can also sense the shadow parasites. She walked toward the center of the chamber. As she moved, her expression changed. Her face showed pain and disgust. There are infected beings in this chamber right now. I can feel their presence like a cold sickness in my mind. Yujin stopped and pointed at War Chief Grakmon. You have been infected for at least 5 years. The parasite is strong in you. It feeds on your natural aggression and makes you start fights that benefit no one. Grakmon's hand moved to his weapon, but he hesitated. Something in Yujin's words made him pause. She turned to face the Velthak section. Prime Speaker Vextar, you are clean. But 3 of your senior advisors are infected. They have been pushing you toward conflicts that weaken your empire while strengthening the Shadow Collective. Finally, she looked at the Corvani area. Elder Zephyrial, your mind is also clean, but the parasite's influence runs deep in your government. They have been using your long lifespan to plan conflicts that span centuries. This is insane, Vextar said, but he was studying his advisors with new suspicion. Even if such parasites existed, how would humans know about them? When we do not, Teho answered, because humans are immune. Our brain structure is different from older species. The parasites cannot successfully attach to human minds. When they try, we feel it immediately. It's like having a foreign object trying to grow inside your skull. Admiral Minsu Kwan's hologram spoke again. 23 years ago, the first human explorers encountered beings infected with these parasites. We didn't understand what we were seeing at first, but as more humans traveled through the galaxy, we began to notice patterns. Every major war of the past 3 centuries, Woojin added, was started by infected leaders making decisions that seemed logical at the time but caused massive destruction. Every economic collapse, every territorial dispute, every breakdown in diplomatic relations can be traced back to parasitic influence. Dr. Hyojin Park showed more data. The Shadow Collective has been preparing for something big. Our intelligence suggests they are building a massive fleet in the outer rim of the galaxy. They plan to stop hiding and take direct control of all civilized worlds. Why should we believe any of this? Elder Zephyriel asked. Humans are young and inexperienced. Perhaps you misunderstand what you have seen. Yujin Song stepped closer to the Corvani section. Because I can prove it right now. Allow me to scan the minds in this chamber. I can identify every infected individual and show you exactly how the parasites influence their thoughts. The chamber erupted in arguments again. The idea of having their minds examined by a human was insulting to many delegates. But fear was growing too. What if the humans were right? What if some of their most trusted leaders had been controlled by alien parasites for years? Tejo raised his voice above the noise. We are not asking you to trust us. We are asking you to verify what we have discovered. Test your leaders. Examine your recent decisions. Look at the patterns of conflict that have shaped your history. And if we find these parasites? Vextar asked. What then? Then we work together to remove them, Tejo replied, and we prepare to fight the Shadow Collective before they complete their plans to enslave the entire galaxy. The chamber fell, quiet as the full implications became clear. If the humans were right, everything had changed. The galaxy faced an enemy that had been hiding among them for centuries, an enemy that controlled thoughts and started wars for their own purposes, and humanity, the weakest species in the room, might be the only hope for stopping them. The first test came when Elder Zephyriel volunteered to be scanned by Yujin Song. The ancient Corvani leader's crystal form pulsed with nervous energy as the human psionic approached. I will allow this examination, Zephyriel announced, but only to prove that human claims are false. The Corvani Federation has existed for millennia. We would know if parasites controlled our leaders. Yujin placed her hands near the elder's crystalline head, her eyes closed in concentration. After several minutes, she stepped back with relief on her face. You are clean, Elder. No parasitic influence. Your thoughts are your own. A wave of approval came from the Corvani section, but Yujin wasn't finished. She moved toward 3 other Corvani delegates sitting nearby. As she approached the first one, her expression changed to one of disgust and pain. This one is heavily infected, she announced. The parasite has been in place for over 30 years. It has influenced every major decision this delegate has made during that time. The accused delegate, a crystal being named Morthak, rose angrily. Impossible. I am loyal to the Federation. My service record is perfect. That's exactly the problem, Yujin replied sadly. The parasites don't make you disloyal. They make you loyal to the wrong things. They push you toward decisions that seem right but cause long-term harm. Dr. Hyojin Park activated her scanner and pointed it at Morthak. The device immediately began beeping rapidly. Images appeared on the chamber screens showing the unmistakable signature of parasitic neural activity. The scans confirm it, Hyojin announced. The parasite is located at the base of the brainstem, exactly where our research predicted. Morthak stared at the evidence in shock. But I feel normal. My thoughts are my own. I remember making every decision freely. That's how they work, Wu Jin-choi explained. The parasites don't control you directly. They influence your emotions and instincts. They make certain options seem more appealing while making others feel wrong or dangerous. You think you're choosing freely, but you're being guided. One by one, Yujin scanned more delegates. The results were shocking. Nearly 40% of the beings in the chamber showed signs of parasitic infection. The pattern was clear. Those in positions of power and influence were targeted more often. War Chief Grakmon submitted to scanning reluctantly. When Yujin confirmed his infection, he was surprisingly calm. How long? He asked. At least 8 years, Yujin replied. The parasite is very strong in you. It has been feeding on your natural warrior instincts and turning them toward destructive purposes. Grakmon thought about his recent decisions. The unprovoked attacks on peaceful colonies, the military buildups that drained resources without providing security, the rejection of diplomatic solutions that could have prevented bloodshed. I thought I was being a strong leader, but I was being used. The most disturbing discovery came when Yujin scanned the Veltec advisors that Vextar trusted most. All 3 were infected. They had been pushing their empire toward increasingly aggressive policies for decades. This explains much, Vextar admitted. Recent Velthac expansion has made many enemies but brought few benefits. I thought my advisors were being cautious and strategic. Instead, they were leading us toward isolation and conflict. Captain So Young had been watching from the observation deck during the scanning process. Now she came down to the main floor with troubling news. Ambassador, our intelligence networks have been monitoring communications throughout the galaxy. The moment we began these scans, Shadow Collective activity increased dramatically. She activated a holographic display showing star maps with moving indicators. Hidden bases throughout the galaxy are going to high alert. Ships are moving from concealed positions. They know we've discovered them. Admiral Min-Su Kwan's image appeared again. We're detecting massive energy signatures in the outer rim. The Shadow Collective is accelerating whatever they had planned. We may have forced their hand. Tejo looked around the chamber at delegates who were still processing the revelations about their infected colleagues. How long do we have? Our best estimate is 6 months, So Young replied. Maybe less. The Shadow Collective has been building this fleet for decades. If they launch their attack before we're ready, they will overwhelm our defenses easily. Then, we need to work together immediately, declared Elder Zephyriel. This threat is greater than any territorial dispute or trade disagreement. All our civilizations are at risk. But cooperation proved difficult. The 3 major powers had been enemies for centuries. Their military doctrines were completely different. Their technologies were incompatible. Their languages and cultures made communication challenging. Even worse, trust was nearly impossible. How could they be sure that all infected individuals had been identified? What if there were parasites that could hide from human psionic detection? What if some leaders were infected but not yet discovered? The solution came from an unexpected source. Colonel Boram Lee stood and addressed the chamber. Honored delegates, humans have been preparing for this war for 20 years. While we appeared weak and primitive, we were actually building a military force designed specifically to fight the Shadow Collective. New holographic displays showed human military installations throughout the galaxy, bases that had been disguised as trade posts, research stations, and colony worlds, ships that looked like simple cargo vessels but carried advanced weapons, technologies that seemed primitive but were actually designed to be immune to parasitic influence. Every human settlement in the galaxy is a fortress, Boram continued. Every human merchant ship is a warship in disguise. Every human diplomat is a trained intelligence officer. We have been infiltrating Shadow Collective operations and learning their weaknesses for 2 decades. Major Seok Jin Han joined the presentation, showing tactical analyses of Shadow Collective forces. Their main advantage is surprise and the ability to turn our own forces against us through parasitic control. But they have weaknesses too. Their technology relies on biological components that can be disrupted. Their command structure is centralized, making it vulnerable to decapitation attacks. Most importantly, added Commander Un Seo-yoon, their forces are designed to fight conventional galactic military doctrine. They expect predictable strategies and standardized equipment. Human military thinking is different, Prime Speaker. Vextar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. You mean chaotic and unpredictable? Exactly, Yunseo smiled. We call it adaptive tactics. Every human military unit is trained to improvise and think independently. We don't follow rigid battle plans because we know the enemy expects us to do so. The chamber buzzed with discussions, in multiple languages as delegates tried to understand what the humans were proposing. Work with species they had dismissed as primitive. Follow military strategies that seemed to make no sense. Trust their survival to beings who had been in space for less than a century. But the alternative was worse. Face the Shadow Collective, alone and almost certainly lose everything. Corvani strategist Lumara was the first to formally accept human leadership. The Corvani Federation will place our fleets under human command. Our pride means nothing if our civilization is destroyed. Velthak Science Admiral Quintex was next. The Velthak Empire agrees. Human tactics may seem strange to us, but they are clearly effective. We will adapt. The most surprising acceptance came from Theron warrior Dracul, who had replaced the infected Grakmon as temporary leader. Theron respects strength above all else. Humans have shown strength by seeing threats we missed and preparing for war we did not know was coming. We will fight beside you. As agreements were signed and plans were made, Yujin Song continued scanning new arrivals to the station. Each infected individual who was discovered revealed more about the Shadow Collective's network. The picture that emerged was terrifying. "They're not just planning to conquer the galaxy," she reported to Taeho quietly. "They're planning to consume it. The parasites don't just control minds, they feed on the life force of their hosts. Their ultimate goal is to turn every thinking being in the galaxy into a food source." Taeho looked around the chamber at former enemies working together for the first time in centuries. "Then we'll have to make sure that doesn't happen." The real war was about to begin. The combined fleet assembled at staging area Omega looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. Veltak insect ships with their curved organic hulls flew alongside blocky Theron war vessels. Corvani crystal ships that sparkled like jewels moved in formation with hundreds of other species craft. And scattered throughout the massive armada were human ships that looked simple and primitive compared to their alien allies. Admiral Minsu Quan stood on the bridge of the flagship, a human vessel called the Determination. The ship had been disguised as a simple colony transport for 15 years. Now its true weapons and defenses were revealed. The bridge was crowded with officers from a dozen different species, all working together despite language barriers and cultural differences. "Admiral," reported Corvani strategist Lumara, her crystal form glowing with urgency, "our deep space sensors are detecting massive Shadow Collective movement in the Helix Nebula. It appears they are strip mining inhabited systems." The main screen showed horrific images. Entire planets were being consumed by gigantic mechanical harvesters. Cities that had existed for thousands of years were being ground into raw material. Billions of beings were being captured and loaded onto transport ships. "They're not just conquering," whispered Dr. Hai Jin Park, who had joined the fleet to study Shadow Collective biology. "They're processing the population into some kind of biological paste. The parasites are using living beings as food for something even larger." Velthok Science Admiral Quintex studied the data with growing horror. The energy readings suggest they are feeding this biological material to massive, organic computers. The Shadow Collective isn't just controlling minds. They are building a galaxy-spanning artificial intelligence powered by the life force of entire civilizations. "How long do we have before they finish processing the Helix systems?" Minsu asked. 72 hours at most," replied Theron warrior Dracul. Despite his species' reputation for aggression, even he looked shaken by the scope of the destruction. After that, they will have enough biological material to begin expanding their AI network to other sectors. "Then we attack now," Minsu decided. "All ships, prepare for combat operations. Remember, we are not fighting conventional enemies. These beings have controlled galactic politics for centuries. They know how we usually fight, but they don't know how humans fight." The fleet moved toward the Helix Nebula in a formation that confused most of the alien commanders. Instead of the neat ranks and organized squadrons they were used to, the human tactical plan seemed chaotic and random. Ships moved in unpredictable patterns. Attack groups formed and dissolved without apparent logic. Commander Yoon Seo-yoon explained, "The strategy over the fleet communications network. Shadow Collective forces expect us to follow standard military doctrine. They have planned their defenses around predictable attack patterns. We are going to do everything they don't expect." The first engagement occurred at the edge of the nebula. Shadow Collective patrol ships detected the approaching fleet and moved to intercept. These vessels looked like living creatures, all curves and organic surfaces. They moved with fluid grace and their weapons fired beams of energy that seemed almost alive. Standard galactic doctrine would have us form battle lines and exchange fire at maximum range, Captain Ji Hoon-bae announced to his mixed-species crew. "Instead, we're going to charge straight at them and fight at close range where their sensors can't track us properly." The alien crew members looked nervous, but they had agreed to follow human leadership. Ji Hoon's ship, along with 50 others, accelerated directly toward the enemy patrol line. Just before collision seemed certain, the human ship scattered in all directions and began weaving between the shadow vessels at point-blank range. The tactic worked perfectly. Shadow Collective ships were designed to fight at long range where their biological sensors could track enemy movement. At close range, surrounded by chaotic human attack patterns, they couldn't target effectively. Within minutes, the entire patrol was destroyed with minimal human losses. "Impossible," transmitted one of the Corvani captains. "No military force abandons formation discipline like that. It should have resulted in disaster." "That's the point," replied Captain Yunseo. "We do what the enemy thinks is impossible. Human, military thinking is based on adaptation and surprise, not rigid doctrine." As the fleet moved deeper into the nebula, they discovered the true scope of the Shadow Collective operation. Hundreds of harvesting ships were stripping entire planets, down to their cores. Massive biological processors were converting captured populations into a glowing paste that was being fed into enormous organic constructs. "Those constructs are computing nodes," Dr. Haijin reported with disgust. "The Shadow Collective is building a biological computer network that spans multiple star systems. Each node is powered by the processed life essence of millions of beings." "Can we destroy them?" asked Admiral Minsu. "Yes, but they're heavily defended. And there's something else. Lieutenant Commander Yujin Song has detected something disturbing." Yujin's voice came over the communication system, strained with effort. "Admiral, I'm sensing massive psionic activity from the largest construct. The Shadow Collective isn't just building a computer. They're creating a collective consciousness that includes the minds of everyone they've captured. The victims are still alive and aware inside the network, but they can't control their own thoughts anymore." The implications were horrifying. The Shadow Collective wasn't just killing their victims, they were trapping their consciousness in an artificial hell where they could be used as processing power for eternity. "All ships, new priority," Minsu announced. "We're not just here to stop the Shadow Collective. We're here to rescue every mind they've trapped in their network." The main assault began with human ships using tactics that seemed insane to conventional military thinking. Instead of attacking the heavily defended perimeter, they flew directly into the most dangerous areas where defensive fire was concentrated. They used the nebula's gas clouds to hide their movements, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Major Seokjin Han led a squadron of mixed human and alien ships in a direct assault on the largest biological processor. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy the construct immediately. First, we need to disrupt the neural connections so Yujin can begin freeing the trapped minds." The attack was unlike anything in galactic military history. Ships dove through clouds of living weapons that tried to grab them with organic tendrils. Fighters weaved between defensive systems that shot beams of concentrated hatred and fear. The Shadow Collective had weaponized negative emotions themselves, but human unpredictability proved decisive. Every time the Shadow defenses adapted to one attack pattern, human ships switched to something completely different. They used mining equipment as weapons, turned cargo containers into guided missiles, and flew in formations that violated every principle of space combat. Yujin Song, working from a specially shielded chamber on the flagship, began her most difficult task. Using her psionic abilities, she started reaching into the biological network to free trapped minds. The process was agonizing. She had to experience the terror and despair of millions of victims while simultaneously fighting off the parasitic influences trying to control her own thoughts. "I can feel them," she reported, her voice filled with pain and determination. "So many minds trapped in darkness. The Shadow Collective has been collecting consciousness for centuries. There are species in here that went extinct thousands of years ago, but their minds are still prisoners in the network." As Yujin worked to free the trapped minds, the freed victims began to turn the Shadow Collective's own systems against them. Computing nodes started malfunctioning. Defensive weapons turned on each other. The organic network that had been the Shadow Collective's greatest strength became a weakness as rescued minds spread chaos throughout their systems. But the Shadow Collective had one final surprise. As their harvesting operation collapsed, massive ships began emerging from deeper in the nebula. These vessels were larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen, kilometers long and bristling with weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. "Admiral," reported the sensor operator, "we're detecting 15 Shadow Collective dreadnoughts approaching our position. Each one is larger than our entire fleet combined." Minsu looked at the tactical display showing impossible odds, but he remembered something that Taeho had said at the beginning of this war. Humans didn't fight to win by being stronger. They fought to win by being smarter. All ships, he announced calmly, prepare for the impossible. We're about to show the Shadow Collective why humanity survived when everyone thought we were too weak to matter. The real battle was about to begin. The Shadow Collective dreadnoughts were unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. Each massive ship pulsed with dark energy and seemed to bend space around itself. Their weapons didn't just destroy matter. They erased things from existence, completely. When they fired, entire sections of the nebula simply vanished. How do we fight something like that? Asked Corvani strategist Lumara, her crystal form flickering with fear. Admiral Minsu Kwan studied the tactical display with calm concentration. We don't fight them. We outsmart them. Captain So Young, what do your intelligence reports tell us about Shadow Collective command structure? So Young Jung had been coordinating intelligence gathering throughout the battle. The Shadow Collective operates like a hive mind, but with a hierarchy. The dreadnoughts are controlled by prime nodes, ancient parasites that have evolved beyond the need for host bodies. They think they are invincible because nothing has ever challenged their mental superiority. Mental superiority? Yujin Song's voice was weak from her efforts to free trapped minds, but there was sudden interest in her tone. Admiral, I need to try something, but I'll need every human psionic we have, and I'll need them to do something incredibly dangerous. Dr. Hai-Jin Park looked up from her biological scanners. Yujin, you're already at your limit. The strain of freeing minds from the network is pushing your abilities beyond safe levels. I know, Yujin replied, but I've discovered something while working inside their network. The Shadow Collective's greatest strength is also their greatest weakness. They are so confident in their mental abilities that they've never encountered a consciousness they couldn't control or absorb. She paused, gathering strength for what she needed to explain. Human consciousness is different. We're chaotic, unpredictable, and full of contradictions. Our emotions don't follow logical patterns. The parasites can't process human thoughts properly because we don't think in ways they understand. Ambassador Taeho Kim, who had been coordinating diplomatic efforts throughout the battle, suddenly understood. You want to attack them with human consciousness itself? Exactly. If I can link with every human in the fleet and broadcast our collective emotional patterns directly into their network, it might cause a psychological cascade failure. Human emotions like love, hope, and self-sacrifice are literally toxic to parasitic consciousness. The plan was desperate and dangerous. Every human in the fleet would need to open their minds to Yujin, allowing her to channel their thoughts and feelings directly into the Shadow Collective network. The process could destroy Yujin's mind completely, and if it failed, the entire fleet would be left vulnerable to mental attack. Do it, Minsu decided without hesitation. All human personnel, prepare for psionic linking. Alien allies, maintain defensive positions and be ready to cover our withdrawal if necessary. As Yujin began the linking process, something unexpected happened. The alien crew members who had been working alongside humans for weeks began asking to join the link as well. We may not be human, declared Theron warrior Dracul, but we have learned to think like humans. We have experienced human courage and human friendship. Perhaps we can contribute to this attack. Corvani strategist Lumara's crystal form brightened with determination. The Corvani have studied human emotions since this alliance began. We find them fascinating and powerful. We wish to help. Even Velthak Science Admiral Quintex clicked his mandibles in agreement. Velthak logic tells us this plan should fail, but human illogic has succeeded when logic failed. We will trust human emotions. Yujin was amazed to discover that the alien minds, after working closely with humans, had indeed absorbed some human emotional patterns. Their thoughts still followed their species' natural structures, but they now contained traces of human hope, determination, and compassion. The psionic attack began as the Shadow Collective dreadnoughts closed to firing range. Yujin, supported by hundreds of human minds and thousands of allied consciousness, reached across space and touched the prime nodes controlling the enemy fleet. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic for the Shadow Collective. Human emotional patterns flooded into their hive mind like poison. Concepts like love without purpose, sacrifice for others' benefit, and hope in the face of impossible odds created chaos in their logical, parasitic thoughts. The prime nodes had spent millennia absorbing and controlling other species' minds, but human consciousness was something they had never encountered before. It was wild, unpredictable, and based on emotional truths rather than logical structures. When they tried to process human thoughts, their own mental patterns began to break. "Down, it's working!" shouted Dr. Hyjin as her sensors showed massive disruptions in Shadow Collective neural networks. "Their command structure is collapsing." The dreadnoughts began firing randomly as their controlling minds succumbed to human emotional chaos. Some turned their weapons on each other. Others simply stopped moving as their prime nodes became paralyzed by trying to understand human concepts, like self-sacrifice and unconditional love. But the effort was destroying Yujin. Blood ran from her nose and ears as she pushed her abilities beyond all safe limits. Her body was shutting down from the strain of channeling so many minds simultaneously. "I can't maintain the link much longer," she whispered. "But I can see their central control node. It's hidden in a pocket dimension connected to the largest dreadnought. If someone can get there and destroy it physically while I keep them mentally disrupted, we can end this." Captain So Young Jang volunteered immediately. "I'll take a strike team through their defenses and plant explosives in the control node." "No," said Taeho firmly. "This is a diplomatic mission. The Shadow Collective are not evil. They're refugees. Their original galaxy was consumed by something even worse. They've been preparing this galaxy as a fortress against that greater threat." "What are you saying?" Admiral Minsu asked. "I'm saying we need to communicate with them, not just destroy them. If there's something worse than the Shadow Collective out there, we need to know about it. And maybe we can find a solution that doesn't require turning the entire galaxy into a feeding ground." Yujin's link with the Shadow Collective had given her access to their deepest memories. Through the chaos of her psionic attack, she could see their true history. Taeho is right. They're terrified. Their methods are horrible, but their fear is real. There's something coming from outside our galaxy that consumes entire dimensional networks. Despite the danger, Taeho made his decision. "I'm going to that control node, not to destroy it, but to negotiate. If we can find common ground, maybe we can work together against the real enemy." The journey to the Shadow Collective control node was unlike anything Taeho had ever experienced. Captain So Young's strike team fought through defenses that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in nightmare. The Shadow Collective's pocket dimension was filled with the consciousness of every species they had ever absorbed. When they reached the central chamber, Taeho found himself face to face with the original Shadow Collective, ancient beings who had survived the destruction of their home galaxy by becoming parasites. They were dying, their consciousness slowly fading after millennia of artificial existence. "Why do you not destroy us?" asked the prime node, its thoughts filled with confusion and pain. "We have done terrible things to your galaxy. We turned your leaders against each other. We harvested your people for food. We deserve extinction." Taeho sat down beside the dying entity, showing no fear. "Because extinction never solves anything. You're afraid of something worse than yourselves. We want to understand what that threat is, and we want to help you find a better way to survive." Through Yujin's maintained link, Taeho learned the truth about the greater enemy, beings from outside normal reality who consumed entire dimensional networks for power. The Shadow Collective had been preparing the galaxy as a fortress because they knew these entities were coming. "There might be another way," Taeho said quietly. "Human consciousness is chaotic and unpredictable. Maybe that makes us naturally resistant to dimensional predators. And if we can teach other species to think more like humans, we might be able to create defenses that don't require controlling or consuming anyone." The negotiation took hours while the battle raged around them. But in the end, an agreement was reached. The Shadow Collective would release all the minds they had trapped and abandon their parasitic methods. In exchange, humanity would help. then prepare defenses against the dimensional entities that were still centuries away from reaching this galaxy. Yu Jin's song collapsed as the psionic link finally ended, but she was alive. The Shadow Collective fleet began powering down their weapons and releasing the billions of consciousness they had trapped. Entire species that had been thought extinct for millennia began to reappear as their minds were freed from the network ambassador. Taeho Kim returned to the fleet as a hero, but he felt only exhaustion. The immediate threat was over, but the greater challenge was just beginning. The galaxy now knew that humanity's chaotic, emotional thinking was not a weakness, but a strength. Human unpredictability and capacity for hope had literally saved all civilized life. In the months that followed, the major galactic powers formally acknowledged humanity's leadership role in defense matters.